Luke Skywalker walks in the Mos Eisley, pulls up to a dealer called Spaceport Speeders, and sells his X-34 landspeeder for 2,000 credits. The transaction takes maybe 3 minutes. Luke's aunt and uncle are dead. He's got a Jedi and 2 droids waiting, and he needs passage to Alderaan, fast. The dealer knows it. That's why the price is 2,000 credits, and not 4,000. The XP-38 had just entered the market and killed demand for X-34s anyway. Luke said so himself while signing over the title. So he was already underwater on a vehicle he'd maintained carefully for years in Tatooine's heat and sand. A distressed sale on a depreciated asset in a buyer's market. 2,000 credits. It's the most economically legible transaction in 6 films, and almost nobody has ever stopped to ask what it was actually worth. The Galactic Credit Standard was the primary currency of the Republic, the Empire, and the New Republic. Backed by the InterGalactic Banking Clan, headquartered on Muunilinst, functioning as a galaxy-spanning central bank, it was a fiat currency that held value for as long as the institution issuing it held power. No official Lucasfilm publication, no Disney-era canonical source, no in-universe document has ever established a credit-to-dollar exchange rate, which means anyone serious about running this calculation has to build one from scratch. That's what we're doing here. The X-34 is the Rosetta Stone. The landspeeder manufactured by SoroSuub Corporation, a company better known for mineral processing that also produced a significant share of the galaxy's civilian vehicles, hovered approximately a meter off the ground, hit 250 kilometers per hour, and seated 2. Luke's personal unit was old and battered, the portside turbine cowling missing, the paint sun-faded, the repulsorlift systems maintained by careful amateur tinkering rather than professional service. Canonical reference materials list the X-34's new retail price between 2,400 and 4,500 credits in current continuity. In the older Legends continuity, that same vehicle cost 10,550 credits new and around 2,500 credits used. Luke's 2,000 credit sale fell below even the used market floor in both continuities. This was a transaction where the seller had no leverage at all. In 1977, the average used car in the United States cost between $3,174 and $5,700, depending on model and condition. An aging civilian vehicle, gently used, sold quickly in a depressed market, tracks against the lower end of that range. That puts one credit at somewhere between $1.59 and $2.85. Adjusted slightly upward to account for the distressed sale discount, since 2,000 credits clearly understated the vehicle's actual value, a working range of $2.50 to $5 per credit becomes defensible. Every price that follows runs through this benchmark. Other methodologies produce different results. Weapon pricing comparisons from 1977 lore suggest $1.34 per credit. One analysis anchored to Imperial Star Destroyer construction costs produced estimates as high as $116 to $153 per credit, a figure that makes every other purchase in the galaxy look insane. Disney's Galaxy's Edge theme park informally treats 1 credit as $1 for merchandise purposes, a pure convenience conversion. The $2.50 to $5 range survives as the most defensible estimate because it roots the math in the most tangible, mundane, universally legible transaction in the entire saga. A sun-faded family vehicle sold in a hurry to a junk dealer. The T-65B X-Wing Starfighter costs 150,000 credits new and 65,000 credits used per canonical sources. At $2.50 per credit, a new X-Wing is $375,000. At $5, it's $750,000. That puts a vacuum-rated, hyperdrive-capable military fighter, a ship that can transit between star systems independently and has an onboard combat computer, in the price range of a luxury apartment or a small business. There's a pattern here that hints at how these prices were originally calibrated. Star Wars was written in the 1970s. Inflation-adjusted community analysis has noted that X-Wing pricing tracks surprisingly well against World War II-era combat aircraft. A P-51 Mustang in the collector market runs $100,000 to $200,000. The films were made by people whose intuitive sense of what military hardware cost was shaped by that era. The numbers show it. The BTL Y-Wing bomber lists at 134,999 credits new in Legends pricing, $337,500 to $675,000 at the benchmark. Nearly identical to the X-Wing, which makes internal sense. Two fighters of similar generation and comparable operational roles shouldn't diverge dramatically in cost. The TIE Silencer, the First Order's advanced interceptor, comes in at 310,000 credits, $775,000 to $1.55 million, making it roughly twice the price of either Rebel fighter. The Empire always charged a premium. The ETA-2 Actis interceptor, the lightsaber-thin Jedi Starfighter of the Clone Wars era, costs 290,000 credits new and 140,000 credits used. The Delta 7 Aether Sprite it eventually replaced runs 180,000 credits new and 145,000 credits used. The newer, presumably superior ship costs 60% more, while the used price of the older ship barely moved. Normal manufacturing economics would expect a successor model to benefit from refined production processes and scale. Costs should fall, not rise. No canonical source explains this. The Jedi Council apparently had unusual procurement relationships. Leave that one for the comments. The Delta 7 didn't even have an internal hyperdrive. Jedi starfighters of that era required external hyperdrive docking rings to make hyperspace jumps. A separate device, called the Silure 25, manufactured by Transgal Meg Industries. That component cost 10,000 credits on its own. At $2.50 per credit, a device enabling faster-than-light travel carries a $25,000 price tag. For comparison, that's approximately the price of a decent used car. The technology that allowed Obi-Wan Kenobi to chase General Grievous across star systems cost less than a new pickup truck. The accessory economy is as strange as the vehicle economy. The YT-1300 light freighter, the hull class the Millennium Falcon belongs to, costs 100,000 credits new and 25,000 to 30,000 credits used in Legends pricing. That used price converts to $62,500 to $75,000 at the benchmark. Han Solo quoted Obi-Wan Kenobi 10,000 credits up front and 17,000 upon safe arrival to Alderaan. 27,000 total for a single trip. Luke's reaction in the cantina wasn't rhetorical. 10,000? We could almost buy our own ship for that. The arithmetic checked out. Han was pricing one journey at the full secondary market value of the ship making it, because he had a debt to Jabba the Hutt and no other options. Obi-Wan agreed anyway, probably because Han was the least dangerous-looking pilot in a cantina full of people who had just watched a Jedi Knight dismember someone. The Millennium Falcon itself carries no purchase price in canonical records. Its Legends entry lists cost as not available for sale. The ship passed between owners through bankruptcy liquidations, sabacc games, and outright theft. Han won it from Lando Calrissian in a card game on Bespin. Lando had won it from a previous owner the same way. The ship has never had a clean title. Assigning it a market value is genuinely impossible, and the canon seems to have accepted this. The Galactic Credit Standard's structural weakness was always political rather than economic. When Palpatine declared the Empire in 19 BBY, Republic credits were rendered worthless within days. Imperial citizens were induced to register for chain codes to exchange their now worthless currency for Imperial credits. When the Empire collapsed at Endor, Imperial credits followed. Grand Admiral Ray Sloane was reportedly paying bounty hunters in owed favors in the immediate aftermath because her currency had ceased to function. The New Republic issued its own credits, but those destabilized following the Hosnian cataclysm in 34 ABY. Skeleton Crew treats Old Republic-era credits as collector's items, essentially antiques. The credits' purchasing power was never really about economics. It was about who had enough soldiers to enforce the exchange rate. Watto on Tatooine understood this before it became obvious. In The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon Jinn offers him 20,000 Republic Dataries for a T-14 hyperdrive generator. Watto refuses immediately. Republic credits? Republic credits are no good out here. I need something more real. Tatooine sat in hut space, outside Republic jurisdiction, outside the reach of Republic commercial law, outside anything the InterGalactic Banking Clan could enforce. The local economy ran on hut currencies, pegats, whoopie-yoopie, truck. Whether Watto was making a political statement about Republic sovereignty or a practical judgment about currency volatility is genuinely contested. The film doesn't specify, and scholarly and fan debate has never reached consensus. Both explanations are coherent. Probably both were true simultaneously. Any price conversion in this video assumes a stable credit from the original trilogy era. The canon explicitly undermines that assumption across every other period. The GR-75 medium transport is where the pricing becomes genuinely difficult to explain with a straight face. Manufactured by Gallifrey Yards, a company that went bankrupt by 5 BBY and was absorbed by Kuat Drive Yards, the GR-75 ran 90 meters long, carried 19,000 metric tons of cargo, operated on a Class 4 hyperdrive with a Class 15 backup, and required a 7-person crew to operate. Armed variants carried 4 twin laser cannon turrets. The Rebel Alliance used them for evacuations, supply runs, medical operations, communications, and on at least one occasion as a fire ship loaded with explosives. 30 GR-75 transports attempted to escape Hoth. 13 made it out. Current canonical sources list the single unit retail price at 180,000 credits. At the benchmark, one GR-75 costs $450,000 to $900,000. A new C-130J Super Hercules military transport, the closest real-world equivalent in terms of roll and rough scale, costs approximately $70 to $80 million per aircraft. The GR-75, carrying 19,000 metric tons of cargo across interstellar distances under its own hyperdrive, retails for somewhere between 1/80th and 100th of a C-130. The Fantasy Flight Games Edge of the Empire sourcebook describes the GR-75 as inexpensive and reliable, which is technically accurate. The word inexpensive is doing a significant amount of work in that sentence. The Rebel Alliance paid less than list price. Canonical sources confirm that after Gallifrey Yards went bankrupt, the Rebellion acquired remaining stock well below suggested retail. The specific price and unit count aren't documented in any source this research could verify. A figure of approximately 40 credits per unit for large bulk purchases circulates in fandom discussions, derived from a particular division of total fleet expenditure. That math is being honestly flagged here. The original canonical source for this specific figure couldn't be pinned down. If you know where it comes from, the comments are open. But even at the confirmed 180,000 credit list price, a ship capable of carrying an entire city block's worth of cargo through hyperspace costs less than a studio apartment in most American cities. The economy wasn't designed to survive contact with real-world comparison. At the capital ship level, any attempt at real-world calibration collapses. The Venator-class Star Destroyer, the Republic's primary attack ship during the Clone Wars, 1,137 meters long, capable of carrying 420 fighters and deploying orbital bombardment, costs 59 million credits. At $4 per credit, that's approximately $236 million for a vessel that can end a planetary civilization on a bad afternoon. A Gerald R. Ford-class aircraft carrier costs roughly $13 billion. The Venator costs less than 2% of that. The Venator's own ARC-170 fighters, at 180,000 credits each, represent 0.3% of the ship's value, a ratio that at least rhymes with how real carriers relate to their air wings, even if the absolute numbers are off by orders of magnitude. The Imperial Star Destroyer, the 1.6-kilometer symbol of Imperial authority, reportedly runs 150 million credits, though this figure comes from limited sourcing. Even at that price, $375 million to $750 million at the benchmark, it's substantially cheaper than a real U.S. Navy destroyer at roughly $2.5 billion. Military hardware in the Star Wars galaxy scales correctly against itself. A Star Destroyer costs more than a Venator, which costs more than a munificent frigate. The internal hierarchy holds. Every figure is just disconnected from what anything would actually cost to build and maintain. The Munificent-class Star Frigate, the Separatist Banking Clan's dedicated warship, prices at 12 million credits, $30 million to $60 million at the benchmark, which is approximately the production budget of an average feature film. One film's worth of money buys the Trade Federation a fully armed frigate capable of running blockades. The Providence-class Dreadnought, the Separatist capital ship commanded by General Grievous, lists at 400,585,000 credits. The specificity of that number, not 400 million, not 400.5 million, but 400,585,000, suggests it came from a sourcebook that performed actual accounting, which raises the question of how the rest of these numbers were arrived at. Now for the part that matters most practically. 100,000 credits, $250,000 to $500,000 at the benchmark. A used YT-1300 in Legends pricing costs 25,000 credits, leaving 75,000 for fuel, modifications, and operating costs. Spaceport docking fees run 50 credits per day at a standard class port, and 150 credits per day at a busy Imperial class facility. That 75,000 credit reserve funds about 4 years of daily docking at an average spaceport, which is far more than any smuggling operation needs before it turns profitable. That's your scrappy one-ship operation. Functional, mobile, and able to absorb a few bad runs before going under. 500,000 credits, $1.25 million to $2.5 million. 2 used GR-75 transports at 125,000 credits each in Legends used pricing. 1 used X-Wing at 65,000 credits. 1 used Y-Wing at 65,000 credits, and roughly 120,000 credits left over for consumables, crew salaries, and contingencies. A stormtrooper earns approximately 10,000 credits per year. 500,000 credits represents 50 years of stormtrooper salary. On that budget, a small rebel cell can field meaningful transport capacity, basic fighter cover, and enough operational reserve to sustain several missions before requiring resupply. The GR-75s carry everything. The fighters protect them. This is essentially how the Rebel Alliance actually operated for most of the Galactic Civil War. At 12 million credits, the math produces an interesting choice. 1 Munificent-class Star Frigate, or approximately 66 new GR-75 transports at the canonical list price, or about 80 new X-Wings. The Separatists bought frigates. The Rebellion bought transports. Whether either side made the right call is a strategy question, not an economics one, but the prices tell you what options existed. Andor's first season referenced 80 million credits as a realistic Rebel fundraising target following the Aldani heist. At $2.50 per credit, that's $200 million, the annual operating budget of a mid-tier aerospace firm. The Rebellion was waging a galactic civil war on the financial resources of a regional defense contractor. The economy of the Star Wars galaxy made this possible because the military hardware simply wasn't priced at anything resembling real production cost. For anyone running a campaign, Fantasy Flight's Edge of the Empire starts player characters with 500 credits. At the benchmark, that's $1,250 in purchasing power. A bodyguard job in the RPG pays 2,000 to 10,000 credits, depending on the client's fame. A used X-Wing costs 65,000 credits, and a used GR-75 costs 125,000 credits. The gap between what a starting character has and what a ship costs is exactly wide enough to fill a campaign with motivated, debt-adjacent behavior. West End Games figured this out in 1987 when they published the first Star Wars role-playing game. Their vehicle prices shaped the economic intuition of every sourcebook that followed, and the numbers FFG used 3 decades later weren't radically different. The economic logic of the tabletop and the economic logic of the films have always been calibrated to the same basic feeling. Ships are expensive, but not impossibly so, and a few good jobs can close the gap. 3 contradictions the sources don't settle, presented without resolution. The X-34 landspeeder carries 2 different new retail prices depending on the continuity tier. Current canonical sources: 2,400 to 4,500 credits new. Legends: 10,550 credits new, approximately 2,500 credits used. At the Legends price, the entire benchmark built here collapses. 1 credit would be worth roughly 30 cents to 54 cents in 1977 terms, cutting every downstream conversion in this analysis by roughly 80%. Both prices exist in official published materials. Neither has been retired. The benchmark here assumes the lower canonical price, but anyone working from the Legends figure gets a fundamentally different galaxy. Both versions of the price are real. They can't both be right. The GR-75 carries 2 official new retail prices: 180,000 credits in current canon and 350,000 credits in the Legends continuity. That's a 94% gap between 2 sources that are both drawing on official material. The Legends figure is almost double the canonical one. Lucasfilm's 2014 announcement reclassifying the expanded universe as Legends didn't include a price reconciliation. Whether the Rebel Alliance's bankruptcy purchase discount came off the 180,000 or the 350,000 baseline changes the economics of the entire Rebel logistics operation by tens of millions of credits. The hyperdrive pricing problem is the one that doesn't have a clean answer, even at the foundational level. The Sillier 25 hyperdrive docking ring costs 10,000 credits. That's confirmed in canonical sources. Various sourcebooks suggest other hyperdrive units priced closer to 20,000 credits, possibly referencing the T-14 generator that Qui-Gon Jinn attempted to purchase from Watto. The specific primary source for that 20,000 credit figure is where the trail goes cold. An escape pod, per one supplementary pricing guide, also appears at 20,000 credits, raising the question of whether a life-saving emergency capsule and a faster-than-light propulsion system were being priced at the same point, and if so, whether the hyperdrive is absurdly cheap or the escape pod is absurdly expensive. The research produced 3 different calculations and no single confirmed anchor. If you have the sourcebook page that settles this, put it in the comments, because the hyperdrive economy is its own rabbit hole. The one figure that holds up consistently through all of this is the original 2,000 credits. That transaction was calibrated to feel real to a 1977 audience, a young man selling his car to pay for a flight, and it still does, 50 years later, because the underlying proportions are human-scaled. Every ship price downstream is either consistent with that intuition or broken by it. The broken ones, measured against what anything would actually cost to build and operate in a real economy, turn out to be the most revealing things the Star Wars galaxy has accidentally told us about itself. A 90-meter interstellar cargo vessel for the price of a studio apartment. A galaxy-spanning war funded on the budget of a regional contractor. Military fighters, priced like vintage aircraft from a war that ended 30 years before the films were made. The math doesn't work. But the economy was never really meant to be audited. Subscribe for more stories like this.